Good afternoon, everyone. Good to see you, everyone here. I think we are rolling. Uh, my name is Matt Lindstrom, and I have the pleasure of serving as the director of the Eugene McCarthy Center for Public Policy and Civic Engagement. And we're really pleased to have Senator Tina Smith with us today for a question and answer discussion conversation with the St. Ben's and St. John's community. We also invited her Republican opponent, Jason Lewis, for a similar event. However, he is unable to join us today. Senator Smith, it's great to see you again. We'll be
great to see you, Matt.
Right on. This will be a 30-minute program facilitated by two student coordinators from the McCarthy Center, Lauren Poole and Colin Yokanovich. And both of these students will have a couple questions for the senator, and then we'll pivot to audience questions in a few minutes, really. As audience members, you have, if you have a question, we would like you to use the hand raise function through the participants option there, and just kind of raise your hand. And then I will call on or sort of ask you to speak. And put the video and audio on. So that should work out well. Yeah, and before we pivot to Laurel and Colin, we have a very quick poll that we're gonna do for all of you. So this should just be real quick here. So here we go. Hope you can see all this. Okay, there it is. Ten more seconds. All right, last second, here we go. I don't know if that's a function of being first on the list or what have you, but there you go. There's some of the results. So thank you very much.
Yeah.
Very good. All right. Well, with that, I am going to turn it over to Colin and Laurel. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Senator Smith, for being here. It's really an honor. So thank you. So just
Great
to get
be
the ball,
with you all.
Yeah. Yes. So just to get the ball rolling a little bit, can you tell us about yourself, why you're running, and about some of your policies pertaining to our age group as college students?
Sure. Well, so I moved to Minnesota with my brand new husband, Archie, when we were right out of graduate school. And we settled here. We grew up, and we didn't grow up. We moved to St. Louis Park, where we had two sons, Sam and Mason, who are now grown. And I got involved in politics at the local level as a volunteer, going to knock on doors for a state legislative candidate. And that was really the beginning of my community involvement. I always think that I got started as an organizer myself. And so that shapes what I think about and what I care about the most from that very first experience. I had a chance to go door to door and talk to my neighbors and hear about what mattered to them. And that led me to really all of the work that I've done since then around how can I make sure that the voices of Minnesotans, the voices of people that might not normally be heard in the halls of Washington, D.C. or in St. Paul, that those voices get heard. When I went to the United States Senate in 2018, I was appointed to that job. And then I ran in a special election and won. And now I'm running for re-election for a full 6-year term. And in this moment, I am thinking about how much stress people are under because of COVID. It's like an earthquake that's shaken our health and our economic well-being. And my top priority is really to help Minnesota recover and respond to this pandemic, and to also do that in a way that allows us to build forward better. As I think about all of you who are in college right now and what this means for you, I'm of course thinking about core issues around college affordability and making sure that we are doing more than we're doing right now. We need to do more to make college affordable and to make sure that as you graduate, that there are good opportunities there for you. But there are also other issues that are so core to our the future of our world, the future of our democracy that I'm thinking a lot about. I'm very eager to talk with you all about climate change and what we need to do to create a clean energy future. I'm also really interested in talking, I'd love to tell you about some of the work that I've been doing in that area, which has been a big priority of mine. And I also just want to add that in this moment, I believe that our country and our state is going through a real reckoning around racial justice. That with the killing of George Floyd, so many people in Minnesota and around this country could not look away from the systemic injustice and racism that we see in criminal justice, in policing. And I believe that there is a moment where we're galvanized to take action on that. This is something also that I have been working on and intend to make a top priority going forward if I win this election in barely 6 days. So there's so much work to do. And I believe that in this moment, we're kind of faced with this choice. Do we kind of take this path of fear and division and chaos, or do we take the path that I've been working on for the last 3 years in the Senate of actually trying to come together and build forward and find common ground so we can accomplish things for people? And that's what I'm dedicated to doing.
Senator Smith, I'm hoping to kind of now pivot the conversation to the different issues. And the first one that I want to ask you about is, as a member of the Committee on Health, Education, Labor, and Pensions, you have, authority on the passage of legislation related to the economy, employment, et cetera. And in the midst of the recession, I want to ask you what policies you believe are necessary to spur job growth and support the employment of the next generation, especially college seniors and graduates who are entering the workforce at this moment.
Yeah. Well, I think that we face a kind of an urgent and immediate challenge, and then we need to think longer term about what we need to do. The urgent and immediate challenge is to get help to families, individuals that are struggling so much right now because of COVID. COVID is not the great equalizer. It does not affect everybody the same. It hits hardest people who are already struggling with an economy that hasn't worked for them. It hits hardest our seniors, and it also hits hardest frontline workers who are kind of in harm's way because of the work that they do, and are also and often not paid wages that allow them to truly take care of their families. So an urgent need is to get more and additional help to families and to small businesses, also to our schools that are struggling so much with trying to figure out how to respond to this pandemic and to keep everybody safe. I'm really disappointed that we haven't passed that legislation in the Senate. We've had great legislation that passed in the House, and so that'll be the first kind of order of first business. But thinking more broadly, what do we do to build an economy that works for everyone in this country? I think there are quite a few things that I would like to continue to work on. One thing is that I believe that we need to raise the minimum wage, raise the federal minimum wage in this country. We are dramatically behind because minimum wages have not kept up with inflation. And if we had a minimum wage that was at the same level as it was when we had the March on Washington, the minimum wage would be over $15 an hour right now. And this makes a big difference because it lifts up everybody in our economy. I also think that it's extremely important that we move forward with paid family and medical leave policy in our country. This is something that every other major wealthy country, industrialized country has, and yet the United States still doesn't have it. And that is a core economic issue for so many families, especially during COVID, right? When people are literally saying, I have to go to work because if I don't go to work, I don't get paid. I believe is a strong need in our country to invest in innovation and research and to provide help to people who want to start small businesses. You know, small businesses provide almost half of the jobs in this country. But if you don't have access to capital or you know, the dollars to kind of get your business off the ground, you're never going to have the chance to build that business and to build wealth for yourself. So in the banking committee where I work, this is something that I'm very much looking forward to working on if we take back the Senate majority and we can make headway there. So these are a few of the things that I'm thinking about. And you'll notice as I talk about the economy, I see the economy really holistically. I mean, it's about childcare, it's about healthcare, it's about paid family and medical leave, it's about housing. All of these issues are economic issues for people, you know, whether they're at the beginning of their careers and their working lives, or whether they are halfway through or towards the end of their careers and working lives. All of those things have to be working for people who are working hard. And I think in our country right now, they're not. And that's why this economy that we have isn't working for everyone.
So, in light of our nation's reckoning with questions of racial justice this summer, what kind of role do you see for policy related to policing?
Well, you know, George Floyd's murder took place just a few miles from where Archie and I live in Minneapolis. The realities of the police use of excessive force and how that disproportionately affects people of color, Black and brown people, that reality has been in place for a long time. But the murder of George Floyd, the killing of George Floyd, I think sort of ripped the blinders off of people in Minnesota and in this country and has created a real reckoning. And there is such opportunity in this moment to take action to address the systemic racism that has existed in our country from the very beginning. My colleague Cory Booker says these racist systems are not an accident of our history, they are our history, and we have to address them head on. Policing, of course, is managed at the local level by local mayors and city councils, but there is a lot that the federal government can do to improve policing, to make it more accountable and to bring more justice to policing. So I have been working to establish some national federal standards for use of force. I have been working to ban chokeholds and the no-knock warrants that contributed to the killing of Breonna Taylor in her own home, in her own bed. I believe that we need to dramatically strengthen the ways in which we can hold police officers accountable for excessive use of force and for violating people's rights. It's very difficult right now because of this system called qualified immunity. It's very difficult to hold police officers accountable. And I think that needs to change. And I think the federal government also should be supporting innovations at the local level for city councils and mayors and police departments that want to make change, want to get more accountability and need support in order to do that. And here's just one example of it. You know, I've done a lot of work on mental health. I'm very concerned about the lack of access to mental health care services and mental, and the unmet needs for mental health care. And we see this playing out every day with people who have a severe mental health crisis. And what happens, we send the police to instead of sending a kind of a first responder. One thing that we could do is we could support local governments' efforts to send co-responders, mental health emergency responder with police officers when there is somebody who is having a crisis, rather than just somebody with a gun and police officers who aren't necessarily trained to deal with this. That's the kind of innovation that I think would improve public safety, which should be our goal. I mean, our goal should be that everybody feels safe in their homes, in their communities, in their neighborhoods, no matter who they are or where they live.
Kind of another issue that I think is animating young voters in this election is the question of health insurance. So a poll that was recently done by the Harvard Kennedy Institute of Politics found that young voters are prioritizing healthcare as one of their top issues in this coming election. And your party has had a wide-ranging discussion on how to address health insurance in terms of the debate between a Medicare for all system that would entail terminating private plans versus, expanding the Affordable Care Act to include a public option. And I was wondering if you could maybe weigh in on where you fall in terms of health insurance in this country.
Well, it is true that we have a wide range of discussions about healthcare and what the solution is, but it is also true that we're united around the common value that everybody should have access to healthcare in this country, no matter who you are or where you live. And this is, to me, a fundamental human right. And in this, we've been just talking a moment ago about challenges in our country around racial justice. And of course, we know that in Minnesota, we have some of the worst disparities for access to health insurance and health outcomes for people of color of any place in the country. So this drives home how important it is that we respond to this, that we fulfill this promise that everyone should have access to healthcare. My view of it is that we should build from where we are. And that's why I have been fighting hard to protect the improvements that we made with the Affordable Care Act, which allows people to stay on their parents' health plan until they're 26, which has provided billions of dollars in subsidy to help make health insurance more affordable, which has expanded healthcare access to millions of Americans. It has made it impossible for insurance companies to discriminate against you if you have a pre-existing condition like asthma or diabetes or being a woman. It used to be that health insurance companies could charge you more if you were a woman than if you were a man. So I think we should protect those advances in the Affordable Care Act. And then we need to take the next step. And I support the idea of doing a public option, which would create a way for people to buy into either Medicare or Medicaid as a public insurance option. And when I was lieutenant governor, actually, we worked on trying to accomplish this with Minnesota Care, which would be a state-based way of doing this. But this would get us towards the goal of having affordable, high-quality health insurance for everyone. And I believe in the long term, it will help to bring down healthcare costs, which is something else that we have to work on really actively. I've done a lot of work trying to make insulin more affordable and other prescription medicines more affordable, but there's a lot to do there as well, so that when you all graduate from college and you pursue the career path that you want to pursue, you shouldn't be having to make decisions about the job that you take based on whether or not that you have health insurance provided by that job, which is the choice that too many people have to make right now. I believe that people, if they have health insurance through their employer, should be able to keep that insurance if they want it, but we should not have all insurance tied to employment. We can see that right now with COVID, right? I mean, with so many people having lost their jobs and also having lost their health insurance, it shows us how risky that approach is.
Thank you. I'm going to, we have a question from the audience, and I'm going to call on Drew Wild here, who hopefully will join us and ask her question herself, if this all works. Hi, Drew. If you could turn on your audio and video. Thank you.
Hi, Drew.
Look that nice. I'm currently at home recovering from an illness.
Oh, no.
Thank you so much for being here. It is such an honor. I work with Laurel and Colin in the CSPSU Votes Coalition. I've been doing some really great voter registration and census guide information for campus. And I guess my question is to you is that I see in your campaign that you promote building bridges instead of, tearing them down. And I guess what I would like to know is, how do you recommend continuing to have conversations with students and people in our community who we may politically differ from?
So, yeah, well, it's such an interesting time we're in. And I think in some ways it's a really dangerous time because we are so in our different kind of camps, and there's not a lot of opportunity really for people to talk to folks who they might disagree with. And social media, and actually the media broadly, kind of keeps us in our groups. And so this is, I always say to people, you can't be afraid of, you have to have a strong sense of what it is that you believe, but you can't be afraid of getting new information, of really trying to understand where other people are coming from. I mean, that is the essence of a civil society, that you don't all have to agree on everything, but you can at least respect one another. And so I think the work that this is sort of the essence of, I think about the work that you're doing at the McCarthy Center. The namesake of the McCarthy Center was such a strong and passionate advocate, but also was a person who believed in sort of civil discourse. And so what I've tried to do in my campaign, and I work hard to do in the Senate, is to find places where I can find common ground. And I always say I'll work with anyone who wants to work with me if we on a place where we both agree. And that doesn't mean that I'm compromising my values. It means I'm focused on finding solutions. And that is what you need to do. And I think, a great example of that is the work that I've been able to do with Lisa Murkowski to expand mental health care services in schools. Now, Lisa and I disagree on a lot of things. We don't have the same view at all on what we need to do, how aggressively we need to move on climate. But we both care a lot about rural health, and we care a lot about tribal nations, and we care a lot about mental health. And so we found places where we can work together. And I think if we had more of that, we would be able to get more done for people. And that's really the point of all of this. It's not to win an argument, it's to make progress.
Thank you very much.
Elliot, you have a question?
Hi, yeah, thanks.
Hi, Elliot.
First of all, thanks so much for being here today, Senator Smith. We really appreciate you taking the time. My question is, given your position on the Senate Committee for Indian Affairs, what kinds of policies have you pursued during your time as a senator to promote tribal rights in Minnesota, and what plans do you have to continue to promote tribal rights in Minnesota?
Well, when I first knew I was going to be appointed to the Senate, it was really important to me to serve on the Indian Affairs Committee, which is the place where policy is made. The federal government and tribal governments have a very unique relationship. It is based on the sovereign rights of tribal governments, and it is based on our trust responsibilities to tribal governments, and it is based on treaty. And so for me, the most important thing is to show respect in everything that we do for those sovereign rights and for those trust and treaty responsibilities. The way this happened is that the government of the United States engaged in negotiations, I guess you could say, with tribal tribal groups that basically, in exchange for giving up land, we agreed to provide. There was an agreement there about what we would do in return. And the federal government has rarely lived up to those trust and treaty responsibilities. And so to me, that is the most fundamental thing. Since I've been on the Indian Affairs Committee, I have worked on a variety of issues. Particularly, I've worked on the real epidemic of violence that Native women experience. And this is just a terrible tragedy, all out of bounds to their numbers. Native women are so much more likely to be murdered, to be trafficked, to experience sexual violence. A bright spot was we were able to pass Savannah's Act, which the president signed into law, which will improve the way the federal government works to hold accountable and to get to the bottom of what happens to Native women when they are the victims of violence, like Savannah Greywind was. One other thing I'll mention is that during the course of this pandemic, we've seen that tribal governments, tribal nations, and urban indigenous communities have been disproportionately impacted by COVID. At one point, the Navajo Nation in New Mexico and Arizona had the highest rates of COVID infection of any place. And so as we in the federal government provided support to state and local governments to respond to COVID, I fought really hard to make sure that tribal governments also got resources to respond. And it was hard going, and we had to fight really hard, but we were able to get that done. And I'm going to continue to do that work as we go forward, because there's still so much more work to be done.
Thanks so much, Senator Smith. And thanks for your leadership on these issues.
Thank you very much.
Okay, we're going to go to Emmett. Emmett, do you have a question?
All right.
Hi, Emmett.
Hi there, Senator Smith. Thank you for being here. I was just wondering what your thoughts are about the recent SCOTUS choice of Amy Coney Barrett, and given that folks are already voting, just what your thoughts on that are, and then how you would like to work with folks from the other side to kind of break down party lines.
Yeah. Well, I think that it was a huge mistake for the Republicans in the Senate to rush through this nomination. We're literally in the middle of an election. I think and they sort of broke their own rule in order to push this through. And I think that it was completely the wrong thing to do. I voted against now Associate Justice Barrett. I was deeply concerned about her record of opposing the Affordable Care Act, or her record of opposing women's reproductive rights. And I think that there's just so much at stake with the Supreme Court nomination. So the reality of the way the Senate rules work under Leader McConnell is there was not much that we could do other than to try to lift up this issue and bring attention to it. And now we will see, because the week after the election, the Supreme Court will hear a case that has been brought to overturn the Affordable Care Act. If the Democrats win a majority in the Senate in next year, then it will be up to us to decide how we want to try to come together. So my value is that I believe that the best thing to do is to try to find ways of coming together across party lines, and to try to look for those places where you can work across party lines. And I hope that we have the opportunity in the majority to show how we can do that. And there's all sorts of things in the Senate that kind of stop the two parties from getting together. Like physically, we're stopped from getting together because we don't ever have lunches together. We don't have activities together. And this was before COVID. And there's also lots of campaign finance things that keep us apart, because there's so much pressure to raise money for these campaigns that you kind of always have to be campaigning rather than governing. And it would be great to change that too, so that we weren't just constantly campaigning. Speaking as someone who's just run 2 elections in 3 years, I'm excited to not have to be campaigning, but just to be able to focus on governing for the next 6 years. But I think those are some things that I think we have to keep in mind as we look forward. And if you're always demonizing the other side, then you're never going to be able to find that common ground, and you lose the ability to respect others with different points of view. And that's, as I said, that's the essence of a civil society.
Absolutely.
So with that being our final question, we've run out of time. And so we just want to thank you once again for being here, and ask you if you are willing or able to share some final thoughts that you have with us.
Well, I want to just thank you so much for the chance to visit with all of you. It's great. I wish we could be in person. I wish I could be up to talk with you, and that time will come again. I hope before too much longer. But I would look forward to, if you have other specific questions or other specific things you want to talk about, my campaign, Edwin Torres, is on this call, and we can make sure that you get your questions into Edwin, and then we can respond back so that we can continue this conversation in another way. And in the meantime, I just want to say thank you all so much. Be sure and vote early if you can. This is the most important election in my lifetime, and your voices are really powerful. You have strong voices, and we need you to use them for the good of our state and the good of our country in this most important election.
Thank you for your time.
Thank you all. And have a good evening, everyone.
All right.
Bye-bye.
Thank you so much. Thanks. Bye, Matt. Thank you.
Bye. Thank you.